Welcome back to GoldwingDocs. It's another one of our wildly popular You Got Questions, We Got Answers Q&A session. This is episode 4, coming up next. I can't tell you how great a response we've gotten to these Q&A videos, and I'm absolutely swamped with questions that people have asked. So I really want to thank you and tell you how much I appreciate all your interaction and all the various and interesting questions that you've been sending. I'm trying to pick the questions that apply to all models of Goldwing as much as I can, basically because I don't want to have these just apply to one type of Goldwing. If you do have a question that's only applicable to one model, say, hey, my GL1000 does such and such, I'd highly recommend that you post it in the GoldwingDocs forum. We have individual forums for each of the different types of motorcycles there, and that way you can get attention and experts answering your specific questions. All right, let's get to the questions. My clutch lever started disengaging closer and closer in. Now it barely disengages at all and I have to pull the clutch in all the way. Is my clutch ruined? Okay, so this is unlike when you have the opposite, where your clutch friction zone starts engaging farther and farther out. That's a sign that maybe the actual clutch is wearing out. But on Goldwings, when it's the opposite, when you have to pull the clutch in all the way in order to get it to disengage, that's actually usually a sign that you are actually wearing out the bushing in the clutch lever itself.
We need to remove the clutch lever. So to do that, there's a 10mm lock nut on the bottom of the lever pivot bolt. So we need to loosen and then remove that lock nut. What we're going to have a look at is to see whether or not the clutch lever bushing has actually worn out. Next, with a slotted screwdriver, we're going to remove the clutch pivot pin. Next, we'll remove the lever and just pull it out just like that. Inside the lever, there's a clutch bushing with a hole in it that rotates inside there. You can see mine is fairly scored, and it's also quite filthy. What happens is the push rod from the clutch piston pushes into that little hole, and if it wears out, it can actually push through that bushing, and if you let it go too far, it will actually push into the lever itself and wear a hole into the lever. So when the bushing is worn like that, that means you have to pull the lever farther. Now you can see I've actually cleaned the bushing. It's pretty scored, so I'm going to have to replace this one soon. Having a look at the lever, I've cleaned it out. It looks to be in good condition. If the rod from the piston has actually pushed into the lever and caused damage to the lever itself, the lever will have to be replaced. I like to use a graphite dry lubricant on this rather than a grease because the grease tends to pick up grit and dirt and cause rapid wear. I've always had really good results with this dry graphite lubricant. So I've applied some of the graphite lubricant to the pivot pin and to the brass bushing, as well as to the inner surfaces of the lever itself. Now make sure that the pin is set on the piston. It's nice and clear and clean. We'll put the bushing into the lever. Make sure the hole in the piston lines up with the slot on the lever. Now we push the rod from the piston into that hole, install the lever, then put in the pivot pin and tighten it in place. Once the pin is in place, we'll then install the lock nut. But before tightening the lock nut, we want to make sure you hold the pivot pin so we don't accidentally loosen the pivot pin by tightening the lock nut. Now give it a quick test. Now I suspect what's happened with your lever is that pin has actually worn through the bushing and perhaps even into the lever. You may have to replace the bushing and perhaps even the lever.
So hopefully that answers your question and that you'll be able to get your clutch working well again soon. Okay, 2 questions that are related. I know I said I wasn't doing model-specific questions, but this one comes up so often It's such a simple and quick answer, I'm just gonna do it. 2 questions. My GL1500 has a weird plastic thing on the right side cubby. What's it for? Second question. My GL1500 passenger foot pegs are too high. How do I adjust them? Well, the answer to that is the same, obviously. So here's the lever they're talking about, little plastic thing. Here's the passenger foot pegs. And this is the lever to adjust the height of the passenger foot peg. So if you pull this in, they actually pop up, and then you can push them down to adjust the height you want, let go of the lever, and they stay where they are. So if you want them higher, you want them lower. That's it. All right, quick and simple, told you. Last question. My mechanic said I have a lead acid battery, which most motorcycles and cars do. I know lead is really poisonous. Should I replace my battery with something else? Okay, so lead acid batteries are used because they have very high energy density, and they also can supply a tremendous amount of current. And they're relatively inexpensive to produce because lead is fairly cheap. Most of the lead is actually contained inside the battery. It's sealed. You can't get to it, so it's not really a problem. However, there is a little bit of lead on the outside of the battery. So let's have a look at my battery here. If we look closely, you can see the battery terminal right there that all the things are connected to. And that is actually lead. And the reason that's lead is because it has to connect to the lead inside the battery, and you don't want it to have 2 dissimilar metals connecting to one another, because you'll get corrosion and electrolysis between the two, especially when you have current running through them, which you do in a battery. As a result, it means that this battery terminal has to be lead. So yes, there's lead that you can actually get your hands on, and yes, it's a deadly neurotoxin. You really don't want it in your body. The more you get in your body doesn't really get rid of it. It just ends up in your brain, and it does some really terrible things. So you really don't want to get lead around you. That's why we're trying to get rid of lead paint and all lead in our environment. So is it dangerous having lead terminals in your battery like that? No. As long as you're not down there licking them and ingesting the lead, you're fine. Just make a point of every time you work with or around your battery or do anything with your battery, just wash your hands really well so you don't inadvertently, touch your face or something and end up ingesting some of that lead that you got on your hands from handling the battery terminals. Just be safe. Well, that's 3 quick questions. I hope that's of some use to you. If you like what you saw here today, please click like and subscribe. It really helps us out if you subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions that you want answered, or if you have comments on the questions we just answered today, please leave them in the comments down below. And of course, don't forget to check out the GoldwingDocs website. We have over 90,000 Goldwing owners and many, many experts just waiting to answer any questions or problems you might have. Thanks for watching.